Yes, thank you, Jared. Hello and welcome to the Midweek Tackle. Lots on the agenda tonight, including Bailey Smith, Dan McStay and Chris Fagan. We'll get to all of them shortly. My name is Jay Clark, joined by Lauren Wood and Sam Landsberger from the Herald Sun. Sam, we're going to start with one of the most divisive issues in the game, the cost of living allowance. You've got the story in tomorrow's Herald Sun. It is back on the agenda. What's the latest?
It is in a big way. Eddie Maguire look away now. I think Sydney and Greater Western Sydney are both massive chances to have their COLA restored. I think these were the dirtiest four letters in the game 10 years ago. But my understanding is the AFL almost ticked this off a couple of years ago. Out of nowhere, it was kiboshed. So the Swans and Giants, they're not counting their chickens just yet. But this is being given serious consideration at league headquarters, and I think it's got legs, and that is going to create a hell of a public debate between clubs like we had 10 years ago.
So explain it. You mean cost of living allowance, which is extra money in the salary cap, a pro rata basis, of course. Remember Eddie Maguire said a few years ago, he said COLA ended up being about how many cleaners Lance Franklin had. It doesn't all go to one player. It's a percentage, right? So if it's 10% for every player and uplift.
Yep.
So are you talking about this being in the salary cap? Is this a soft cap thing? Where is the extra money going?
Great question. So last time that the clubs had 9.8% additional in the salary cap, they've asked for more money in the salary cap and the soft cap.
Yep.
Now, my belief is that the TPP, the salary cap for players, that's long odds to get ticked off.
Yep.
But I think there are a really good chance to get some relief in the soft cap, and that would help them pay their assistant coaches more money, because it's a lot of work to not only recruit assistants to Sydney, but also to retain them.
This is overdue for mine, because the cost of living, as you say, in Sydney is quite is extraordinary. That's why Jordan Dawson went from Sydney to Adelaide, because the cost of the house he could buy was half the amount of money, if you know what I mean. So I think this is overdue. However, other clubs will absolutely hate it.
Well, that's the thing. I would agree with you, Jay. I think it's overdue, but I think this is where they're actually going to have to be really, really careful with this. And if it is going to be a salary cap, which, as you said, Sam, is incredibly long odds to get up, I think it would have to be tipped more in the favour of maybe is it that lower sort of 30% or 40% of your list? How do you police that?
It's a great point. Yeah.
I think it does have to really be focused, as you say, on the soft cap. I mean, assistant coaches, football department staff members, they were the ones that copped it in the neck during COVID, weren't they? They were incredible slashes and burns to those sort of budgets and salaries that have truly never recovered. So if there was money sort of floating around, I would love to see it go to people like them.
So here are the facts. So basically their argument is that a kid drafted to Geelong over, say, Sydney or the Giants, they are out of pocket so much straight away. The other examples are, Ben Matthews, he's been living by himself for 5 or 6 years.
Assistant coach.
Mark McVeigh, assistant coach. He chooses to live 90 minutes away from the Swans base because he can't afford to live nearby. Craig Jennings, he lives in a van. So many assistant coaches, they can't afford to relocate their families because a 3-bedroom apartment in Sydney is way too much.
Did you just say an assistant coach lives in a caravan?
Mobile home, yes, Craig Jennings, absolutely, and he's got no issue with that. But it's clearly a problem for the two clubs up there. And the fact is as well that they can't attract talent, because if a strength and conditioning coach wants to go from Melbourne to Richmond, he doesn't have to move house, let alone move to Sydney and pay an exorbitant cost in their market.
I think it's a big story that's going to anger a lot of other people and a lot of other clubs.
I think it is. And I think, as you say, that's where the balance has to be found between sort of the Bondi Rat Pack, as it were, for want of a better term, and these people that actually need a boost to those salaries. But the COLA is one thing. The Northern Academies are sort of also in the spotlight a little bit too among this competitive balance thing, because we've seen Sydney, to use them as another example, 3 of their best players they've plucked from their own academy. Gold Coast absolutely reaped the benefits at the recent draft with four boys essentially from up the road. What's kind of, I guess, the play there? I would imagine most other clubs are feeling it's a little bit unfair.
So there's a strong chorus of clubs that don't want these northern clubs to be able to secure the cream of the draft crop through their academies. Bad luck. The AFL is they never even considered changing or restricting the access to players in these academies. Such is their importance to the development of the game. They think these are just crucial. So last year, I think we all overreacted with the NGAs when Jamara Ugelhagen went number 1. Clubs lost their ability to take players early on. There won't be an overreaction to what happened at Gold Coast last year. You mentioned the 3 Sydney boys. They've had 5,000 kids go through their academy. 16 have been drafted. 3 are superstars. But but it's a pretty small percentage, and that's a lot more players playing football in rugby league heartland. These clubs, they do a really good job. Like, they invest over $1 million a year.
But what you're saying is we can lock them in.
Lock them in.
Gold Coast had 4 players, Jed Walter,
Yeah.
Jake Rogers, Ethan Reid, etc., and they all went crazy saying that they needed to be wound back or abolished. You're saying lock them in. I think that is a great thing for the game because you know what? You wind back the clock 6 or 8 years ago and Gold Coast was losing player after player. We were up in arms saying you've got to shut the club down because you can't hold on to their players. Well, now they're starting to grow and develop
homegrown talent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we can't have it both ways. They're doing if they're developing these young players who are stars of the game and who are going to stay in Queensland, then that's exactly what the game means.
The other part is they're developing players for other clubs as well. Like, these clubs don't always match bids, so they're actually growing the talent pool. I mean, we've got to find another 45 players to field, so Tasmania can field a team. So they are growing the talent pool, and I agree. I think St Kilda and Port Adelaide were among a long list of clubs that pushed against this. Bad luck. Lock them in.